Hi, everyone. You had a good conference? Great conference? Awesome conference. All right, I'm pleased to see all of you here. I need to tell you that this is a general talk about technology, and there is also a lot about sociology, culture, and art. So if you're at the end of the day, of the last day of the conference, and your brain is a bit tired, I think you are in the right place. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. So you could probably spot me here eating banana. I can tell you this is not all about medical school. You know, there is sleepless nights and thousands of pages to study. But at times I felt like, you know, I'm a monkey. Lack of creativity. And this is what really killed it for me. So if next time someone mentions sunk cost for you, remember my example. I spent 12 years on that. And I'm basically now started programming. And in the middle of my career, I spent a bit of time trying to extract things from the road footage. So you can see here in the top right, I'm trying to find the vanishing point. And on the bottom middle, I create a bird's eye view, which is using inverse perspective mapping. And as you can see here, basically I'm reading the arrows, the text, and the speed limits. So I basically finished the project, and this was published in a couple of papers, and you could find them online. But that is really not pays my mortgage. So I work as a solution architect for a company called ASOS. They are a global fashion retailer, and they have been growing steadily 35% every year. And we handle more load than Stack Overflow, and we turn over 1.5 billion pounds a year. Now, introduction over. How many, I guess most of you guys developers, right? Like me. Developers, thank you. Do we have QAs? Architects? Yeah, a few architects. Scrum Masters? Good. Scrum Servants? I guess all of us in one way or another are Scrum Servants. But apart from that, I'm really interested in knowing how you make decisions every day in your work. You know, there are times we make decisions, and our decision sometimes, not always, sometimes does have a bearing on the ultimate success or failure of the project. But not exactly we see it this way. And now, reality is that we should be learning from these kind of decisions and mistakes or failures that basically it results. But the learning process is a process of association of the actions with the results. But sometimes the results are way far in the future, or the parameters that affect it are basically too many to be able to say, you know, we chose this technology X instead of Y, and that resulted in 2 months failure. Or we basically lost like half of our production database. In good times, you know, like we delivered the project on time and on budget. But how do you make a decision, especially in an environment where we are confronted with so many conflicting opinions, you know, which JavaScript framework should I use? And for example, which database should I use? NoSQL, SQL, and these kind of conversations sometimes become very opinionated. I mean, nowadays being opinionated is very positive. So basically, it's very simple. When you look at it, the way that we make decision should be facts coming in, the logical process, and then comes out the decision. And the decision will lead into action. But that's not as simple as that. Why? Because we do not live in a vacuum. So the surroundings do have an impact on us. And the surrounding come in the form of hype, culture, peer pressure, or a particular narrative. So I would like to look at some of the behaviors that we show in the tech community. And it's basically just no judgment. It's a clinical view in what we do. So, sarcasm. I'm sure you have noticed that we often express our opinions in the form of sarcasm. And some of us better than others. And we got a champion, obviously, Hadi Hariri. For those of you who know him, know that people actually created an account, a parody account, Sarcastic Hadi. But it wasn't as sarcastic as Hadi himself, so they closed it down. And he's so good that basically when it comes to the sarcasm itself, he can be sarcastic about sarcasm as well. Now, but it's not Hadi, is it? It's all of us. Another behavior is special attention to diversity, and you could call it pluralism. Now, our community are very conscious towards pluralism in the form of feminism, LGBT, Black Lives Matters, and this is all good. But we just need to understand that these behaviors obviously affect the way that we interact. And for example, these are just a handful of examples. You could see that, at the top, obviously there is a conversation about gender, in the middle and down, obviously looking at black versus white, black being shown as negative. So there are all these elements of pluralism, and we are very conscious and positive about it. Now, there is another behavior as well. Troy is an amazing security expert, and I highly respect him. But not just him, all of us, even when it comes to objective topics such as performance, it's very easy for us to quickly fall back to our subjectivity. It's worked for me, so basically, if it doesn't work for you, go and use something else. So, what does it mean? I'm going to share a snippet from Wikipedia that might surprise some of you. Postmodern thinking. All of what we talked about is part of the postmodern thinking. And that's where we actually diverge from the kind of technical discussion. I need to go back and really understand what postmodern thinking means. Where did it come from? So, postmodernism was a cultural and artistic movement from the 60s that started infiltrating all aspects of our lives. And we borrowed behaviors from it. It started mainly as a reaction to modernism that started to suffocate us. We as humans couldn't live without all the goodies that come with modernism, all our telephones, our phones, TV, everything else. But we had to tame its blandness. It was suffocating us. And in the 60s, by fading idealism, there was a melting pot of culture, Zen, mysticism, even modern Western philosophical ideals such as existentialism, created a melting pot that each had a contradicting value system, and we had to come up with ways to resolve and assimilate these contradictions. So this book is something that a lot of people believe this is where it started. 1966, Robert Venturi basically attacked modernism and said that rectangular shapes in architecture basically are bland and we need something else. So he embraced complexity, contradiction, curve and color. This book is available in PDF freely, so do have a look. And basically, a snippet from it, it says, in modern architecture, we have operated too long under the restrictions of unbending rectangular forms. So, you see, embracing complexity and contradiction. In psychology, I don't know who of you guys have read this. I did read it, I think, when I was a teenager. It's a great book. So it defines 4 different statuses of our mind. You're okay, I'm okay. You're okay, I'm not okay. You're okay, sorry, you are not okay, I'm okay, and none of them okay. So there are 4 different, and it says, you're okay, I'm okay is the best one. You already see this kind of relativism that was the context of the 60s and try to assimilate all these contradicting views. In painting and sculpture, and you could see that we started from the exotic and abstract paintings of Kandinsky and Picasso to familiar pop art, to mundane, as if art which has always tried to evade mundane and ordinary, suddenly it became fashionable. So artist basically says, this is my stuff, and I think it's art because I say so. Self-referentiality. An extreme example of that is the unmade bed. Anyone have seen this? This is basically housed in Saatchi galleries as a revolutionary piece of art. In literature, even authors started making fun of literature. And from that, you could see the irony and sarcasm. And in Shame, from Salman Rushdie, you could see, and generally magic realism, you could see that the works of magic realism blends the fantasy with reality, as if the reality is only material for the imagination of the author. So I've got 110 other slides to explain the rest, but probably I will spare you. So what does it mean? I mean, we just diverge into the world of culture. But what does it mean for us in tech? First of all, objectivity looked wrong in the face of relativism. So we feel that it's probably offensive to, be objective. We have to find a way to marry all these different ideas. And scientific methods, as what drove the modernism, actually lost some credit or clout, lost their power. And elements of magical thinking and fantasy started appearing into our culture, which we'll have a look. And in short, burden of the proof disappeared. If I'm trying to say something, I don't need to bring any proof because it's all about my opinion. Now, looking at elements of fantasy, do you realize yourself probably looking at yourself as a ninja or as a guru or as a magician, a rock star? So this is our current culture. And how do we make decisions? Let's look at a couple of examples. Again, this is a simple example of things that I found without passing any judgment, because this is what everyone does, including me. So, for example, a team, there is an article there that's why they stopped using Slack. Just didn't work for us. The objective evidence for making that decision there wasn't any. Why we stopped using Drupal for our platform? Again, no numbers, no evidence, no hard evidence. And sometimes it happens to the best of us. When we want to talk about performance, we resort to showing a screenshot. But what was the median? What was the statistical characteristics of these numbers of performance? A screenshot and anecdotal evidence isn't enough. This one, stop using mock. Why? Because I'm saying so. Stop having tests that, fail when you make unrelated changes. I would rather have no tests. So how would you feel when people building bridges using these techniques? How safe would you feel? Or the doctors and pharmaceutical companies bringing new drugs would do this the way that we behave. I'll just bring one example. This is published in BMJ. They looked at 300,000 patients, more than that, in order to find out if something works or not. And if you think that this is only related to very important things, that's not all there is. FDA even looked at the antibacterial soaps and said there is no evidence. Even our hand wash is something that we need to look at with evidence. So where does it take us? This is not just a rant, obviously, about the current culture. I have some solutions. And the solutions is that we need to go back and think scientifically, like the rest of scientists and the rest of science. So the way that basically science improves is we come up with theories and prove them, one. And two is that we run experiments and empirical evidence basically shows us that something is correct or not. Do you see rhetoric in there? There is no rhetoric. You don't have to be, this is not basically the art of speaking. So going back to Dijkstra, this is what he says. The required techniques of effective reasoning are pretty formal, but as long as programming is done by people who do not master them, the software crisis. He was talking about software crisis. So, where does that leave us? How do I go about and start doing these kind of things? So, as I said, our surroundings do come in different forms. What we should do, and usually when we say that, okay, this is wrong, this is right, it works for me. Why it works for you? Do you have a particular kind of notion that it works for you? Does it, like an environment that works for you? We need to define that into the input parameters. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples. Who in the audience believes that containers are great, super, super great? Yeah, a few hands. Who believes containers are mainly hype? Yeah, a few people. Right. So if it was supposed to be democracy, I think actually they are equal, right? So I want to look at this subjectively. I want to say, if I'm going to use containers, right, how is it going to affect my availability? And I want to calculate this number. So as you can see here, I've got two scenarios. One is that I run them separately, and the other one, I run them on the same machine. I assume that basically, if I run, they are balanced. So if I run A and B together, basically they're going to level each other's resources. So let's go to the first case. High availability in containers. Let's assume they have 99% chance of, their basically availability is 99%, 2 nines, each one. So what is the availability of 3 instances? If you are an architect, this is your job every day. Anyone? Right. So it's almost 3, 9, and a 7. And if you have service B as well, which is different and running differently, the same characteristics, and it's the same. Now, the total system which relies on A and B, how much will it be? So again, if you're an architect, you have to use these. Now, what if I run them together? High availability in containers, you will have to look at what is the likelihood of basically 4 of them to fail. How much is it? 6 nines. So by simply running containers in the same machines, considering there is a balanced use of resources, so I didn't have to stretch my hardware, but sometimes I might just add a little bit to my hardware. Using that, I've done that. So how do we calculate, for example, that? This is a binomial distribution. If you guys done any bit of statistics or probability, you are familiar with that. And it's a very simple algorithm and formula. And I mean, I've created this in Python, and just a handful lines of code. So, second example. I want to, there is not always possible to have this as a mathematical formula. Sometimes you have to do this basically by reasoning. But there is a way to reason mathematically as well. So I want to talk about API responsibility if you have a health endpoint. So anyone here creates a health endpoint for their API? Yeah, a few people. So there are different opinions. Again, there are different opinions. One group of people say that an API health endpoint should understand what is the success of the application. And the other one says, no, it can't really do that. So I don't know how much logic you put into the understanding of your API and health endpoint. But we want to use mathematics and logical reasoning to get that across. So basically, this is the API. Request comes in, and it gives a response. So it's like a canary. You ask it, is it 200 or 500? Right, that's as simple as that. But in which condition should it return 500? For example, if my user that I'm connecting to database doesn't have the permission to a particular table, should it return 500? Who believes that it should return 500? And who believes it should return, okay, a couple of people. Who believes it should return 200? Yeah, a couple of people again. So, reality is the application is a function, is a mathematical function. It has a domain and maps a domain to a codomain. So, in order to understand the health of the system, basically what it means is you have to have all the domain, which means that you have to know all possible requests, because you start to put more and more. For example, say, okay, this creates users. This is a customer database. So, okay, I want to see how it works. It has access to table customer. You do that, and next time it happens, you say, oh, I want to find out if I can get a customer. So I create a dummy customer 999, and I want to get it. Okay, fine. Now you want to, okay, you know what? I want to create customer. You should be able to create customer as well. So it's a slippery slope that you go down. And that's why you say, this is a function. You have a domain, you have a codomain. And basically all this function does is maps it. So all is not bad. You know, there are traces of objectivity. Some of you guys probably familiar with what Jepson basically does, the Affairs website. It looks at databases in terms of high availability and cap. And you know, various elements of consistency and things such as that. Now, there is another one. Tech Empower is a great place for benchmarks. This is actually like gives you, okay, you are saying something is quick, show me. So these are great examples, but we just have to expand on them. So I want to go back in history. And it goes back into probably the first IT project. I guess little has changed in the history. And the first IT project characterized familiar aspects of IT projects. £1,700 in 1823. After 20 years, they spent 17,000. And it didn't finish. So this is Charles Babbage. And Babbage basically asked UK government to be able to build a difference engine. And the difference engine was it would be able to do differential equation. But he also lost interest towards the way. And what happened was that he said, you know what, I found even something bigger. And what I can do is I want basically a system which he called an analytical engine, which can do anything. It's not as specific. And he said that, you know, the problem is that I have limitations in hardware. So I can't really run this very efficiently. But at least what I can do, I can turn infinity of a space into infinity of time. So it's going to just take longer. So this is what he said. I give the input, function, output. But unfortunately, the failure of the project he had resulted in 100 years of delay into the creation of what he called an analytical engine. Until Konrad Zuse, he was a German engineer, he started working. And he said that one of the fundamental things he actually did was he understood the input is the same as output. You could represent the input, the program, and the output as a machine code. And the other great thing he did as well was to use binary. And one of the reasons he actually used that was because he was an engineer and having anything other than binary would have been difficult to implement. But actually it was Alan Turing who built this and turned it into a theory. He wrote published articles, and these articles actually prove what original analytical engine could have done. So he turned this into these. So we got to modularity. So these guys basically didn't do opinions. They were in the work of science, the work of experiment, not experience. And interesting that we start with this diagram, we end up with the same thing. So that circle in the middle, we need to get rid of it and go back and start doing everything by using mathematics as well as formal reasoning. So to recap, I just need to remind you a couple of things. The burden of proof lies with someone who is claiming to change the status of the art. And this is how science works. So if science has accepted something and you are coming and saying something completely different, then this basically means that, well, you're not going to go very far unless you can prove it. So remember, next time someone says from something that is established, says something contradictory, just ask him for evidence. I mean, it was interesting in this conference, I saw at least 4 different talks talking exactly about the same. Adam Thornhill, he talked about how to get very objective by just looking and analyzing codes. Evelina talked about how you can actually get these a lot of data insights from Stack Overflow. So, next one is just be aware of postmodern thinking. We cannot not think postmodern. You know, we are part of the society, but just bear in mind how it's impacted our decisions and our behavior. And try to bring objectivity and scientific rigor back into the important decisions you're going to make. Next time you want to go and choose a technology, just do this. Just start looking at the numbers and facts in terms of either proof, which is, we don't normally get that, but at least we get empirical evidence. And again, remember that we come from a long line of scientists and engineers. So, this is a cinema. Some of you like to basically watch the credits. So, thank you very much. Enjoy the credits.
Well, the old world may be dead.
Thank you.
Our parents can't understand, but I still have parents, and I still love the old world. Oh, I had a New York girlfriend, and she couldn't understand how I could still have parents and still love the old world. So I told her, I wanna keep my place in the old world, and keep my place in the arcade, 'cause I still have parents and I still love the old world. Alright, I say old world, I say old world, I say well, I see the 50s apartment house, bleak in the morning sun, but I still love the 50s, and I still love the old world. I wanna keep my place in the old world, and keep my place in the arcade, 'cause I still have parents, and I still love the old world.
Swedish.
Alright. I see the 50s apartment house. It's bleak in the 1970s sun, but I still love the 50s, and I still love the old world. I wanna keep my place in this old world, now we say bye-bye, old world.